All right, well, then I will call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 9th meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Costa Mesa Sanitary District. We will get started with roll call, please.
Chair Elodie Katz,
Present.
Vice Chair Sue Lester, Committee Member Annette Watson, Cindy Brenneman, Daniel Baum,
Here.
Dean Fisher, Vicky Fernandez,
Here.
Jeff Arbor, Judith Gilo, Michael Toe,
Here.
and Rosemary Chora.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comments. I apologize, I can't see very well. Is there any members of the public?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay.
No.
And no written feedback?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to item B1, approving the minutes from our last meeting on September 14th. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve them as presented?
This is Michael Toe. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Michael. Would anyone like to second?
Second.
I apologize, I couldn't quite hear. Was that a second?
Yes, Dean Fisher made a second.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we have a first motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll move on to item B2, the massive Eldon project.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If I may make a request, Madam Chair, if we can
Do you want to go
reorder.
to FOG first?
No, you want to reorder. If the committee doesn't mind, we would like to move item number 5 up to item number 2, and then we'll move item 2 down to item number 4. So we would like to take number 5 next, which is receive and file the fiscal year 2021-22 CR&R performance review. That's okay.
Okay. Okay, is that because Mike Carey is there? I
No, I've got staff here and also consultants here for item number 3, so want to get them out of here when they're
Okay.
done.
Okay, so you don't want to do FOG first then?
No, we'll do that after the CNR performance audit.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll move on to B5 then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to turn this over to Nabila Guzman of our staff. She does our annual performance audit of our waste haulers, CR&R. Her findings are in your attachment, but I'm going to have her give you an oral report, and then we like to open up for questions or concerns from the committee. So I'm going to turn it over to.
Good evening, Chair Katz and members of the committee. Every year we audit CR&R for the prior fiscal year. The term for this review was July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. Attached is my full review, and in the analysis is a summary. In our first article per the agreement, we did highlight that from June 2021 through January 2022, CR&R experienced significant route delays on an almost daily basis due to staffing problems and trash truck mechanical failures. During this time, CR&R was hit with many COVID cases, which resulted in staffing problems for them. But we did verify that all material collected from CMSD was going to their MRF and AD facility as outlined in our contract. Every year during this analysis, we do calculate our net to hauler rate. It is the wish of the board that we stay within 10% of the county average. And for the year in review, our standard per unit net to hauler payment was $19.14, which is $4.55 below the county average of $23.69. The net to hauler payment is low during the year in review because a decrease in overall tonnage collected in our service area, and we are in year 4 of our 5-year rate increase. In operations, staff did note the decrease in collection service and increase in wait time experienced by CMSD residents. It was a result in, again, route delays and then just their customer service phone. We did want to highlight the long wait times and missed collections experienced. It was also during the year in review that Costa Mesa City Hall was affected by the increase in calls because they couldn't get through to CRNR's customer service. So we did have City Hall staff kind of assisting CMSD with the amount of residents calling in to complain. I did want to highlight that during the year in review, CMSD route manager who manages all the daily routes, large item pickups, and any other special pickups, had a high turnover, with CMSD being assigned 4 different route managers and then a 5th one during this current fiscal year. In addition, CMSD had 2 operation managers, and during that same period, and then we have had a new operation manager during this fiscal year. I did want to highlight this because the constant changes in operation management only further delay improvements and further delay staff making a difference for residents. For collections, in the report attached is a count of missed collections over the last 4 fiscal years. For the year in review, there were 767 missed curbside pickup complaints. This is just complaints that come in. A complaint can say my whole block was missed or my whole neighborhood, multiple streets. We don't count the homes, we just count the complaint. So this is a significant increase from last year. It increased 80% from last year. Another program we review is the Christmas tree collection programs, and there was a 39.60% increase in missed Christmas tree complaints from the previous year. Again, we also want to highlight that we count the number of complaints that come in, not the homes missed. So again, a complaint can say my whole block, 5 of my neighbors were missed. In miscellaneous, we wanted to highlight that currently staff is renegotiating a agreement with CRNR to be SB 1383 compliant, which puts the regulatory burden of route reviews, tracking contamination, tracking exemptions, compiling new reports on CRNR. That concludes my report. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm curious how the complaints are filed. Is it phone call only? If it is a phone call, are they messages left? And then also, is it done on the Costa Mesa Sanitation District app?
It's through both. So the complaints are residents that have the app on their smartphone through our website, or when residents call in, leave a voicemail, there is a way for staff to input it, and then we have a selection. We can say a phone call. It was through email. So even if residents email our info account, we do enter it into our GoGov system for tracking.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Rosemary Chara. Item number 7 here says there was an 80.47 increase from the previous year. So that high year is calendar year 2021.
It's fiscal year. It's per fiscal year.
So fiscal year, that was July
1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
Okay. So it's even, so those missed pickups seem to increase as, say, COVID cases were coming down and businesses were opening up and everyone was getting back to work, but the missed pickups increased?
That's correct. And again, that I do want to tie it into the turnover in our route managers for CRNR. During the year in review, we had 4, and with 1 being assigned as early as August. So it takes time when a new route manager is assigned. They need to get familiar with their routes. They need to get familiar with what our problems areas were. And then add to that the breakdown of trash trucks, which is why we continue to see an increase even though COVID cases were dropping in our county and everything was reopening.
And do you see the missed collections now going down or staying the same?
We are giving the board monthly reports on this, and you can find that on our board docs. In fact, we just presented this yesterday to our board, and actually it was on a calendar year, and it fluctuates. September was really high. We had like 178 missed collections, and then last month we had 80 missed collections. We believe there was a part of the east side of Costa Mesa. There was I guess you could say a disgruntled employee or disgruntled driver that we don't know why. He was just decided to want to miss some collections placed. Now we saw some improvements once he was replaced. So I know that was a significant factor. Other in the past, I know that Nabila mentioned route managers, but we also had drivers catching COVID. So you know when they have COVID, they have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So now you got new drivers coming to the community who's not familiar with the routes, so they're going to miss collections. So and then on top of that, older trucks were still in operations. We now have 4 new trucks in operations. So we're hoping the new trucks, the consistent route manager and the consistent drivers will see that number starting going down. We're hopeful. We'll keep our fingers crossed. But even on a perspective, like I said, the 81 missed complaints last month, if you put it in the big picture, that's less than 0.5% of the 23,000 residents we serve. So still, yes, it's a high number for us. We still want to see that number down. And in reality, you're never going to get zero. You're always going to have some complaints, some missed trash collections. It's inevitable, but we'd like to see that number go down. But again, in the big picture, it's less than 0.5% of our whole service area.
Scott, we have a hand raised online, committee member Baum.
I'm just curious if the Christmas trees are separate from the 767 missed curbside pickups.
They are. This is Nabila. They are. So during the holidays, we do have a separate topic item. So when residents are complaining or submitting their complaint, and I do double check them at the end of the week. So any resident that may have selected another topic, I make sure that the right topic was selected for reporting purposes.
And if I may add to the last 2 Christmases have been quite challenging for us with CNR picking up Christmas trees. I mean, we're picking up Christmas trees in February. All right. And so to avoid that this year, we're currently out to bid to hire a third-party contractor. And so the way the program would work, the program works, you put your Christmas tree out the day of your collection. And if it's not picked up, they call us, and we're going to call that third-party contractor, like, hey, here's the address, go pick it up, go get it now. And then we're going to bill CR&R for that service. And they're well aware of what we're doing there. And the Christmas tree recycling program will go a lot smoother than it has gone the last 2 years.
Thank you.
A comment. Sometimes the missed pickups could be also the resident. You know,
Yes.
the reason I share that is kind of a funny story, but I had brought my trash out and I didn't know I missed it. I didn't care, whatever. Went back inside, came back out. There was a red tag on my garbage can. And I was like, huh. So I read it. And it said, we didn't pick up your trash because you missed the 6 o'clock drop off time or whatever. And I thought it was interesting. And came back to put the tag, but not put the trash. But maybe it was a
Before.
separate truck or something.
That might have been our code enforcement officer that your cart was out after trash day if you ended up missing it.
It was the same morning.
It was the same one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same morning. It was in a few hours.
Yeah,
but-
that's
Yeah,
bizarre.
it's a bizarre one.
I
thought
never
I'd
heard that
share.
before.
Well, or maybe, like I said, maybe CRNR has like a pickup truck, somebody drive around and say, oh, I missed it. And like, we'll make sure they know why. But
Never heard that before.
Yeah, me
But you are right. Sometimes the residents maybe put the carts too close to a car.
oh, okay.
And so the driver doesn't want to pick up the cart and fear he or she might damage the vehicle. So there's been some of those incidents as well. Yeah.
This is Chair Katz. I had a couple comments. Just with this 80% increase, I understand there were some points like Mike Carey's performance and the new representative that we have, but saying that it's acceptable compliance, I just really struggle with that phrasing. Is there a level of missed pickups that at some point would be considered unacceptable?
Well, again, I would say last year, the board set some benchmarks for to achieve in order for them to receive a CPI increase. And they did not achieve those benchmarks, and therefore the board did not approve their CPI increase. And I think we're the only agency to do that. But there isn't, that was last year, but the board really hasn't set a benchmark of what's acceptable type of amount of missed collections. We just know if we look at our past history, I tell you, example, back in 2017, 18, I think we had a total of 70 missed collections for the entire year.
Right.
Again, that could also be due to less means or less ways for the public to notify us. And now, more people are getting to know about our Gov outreach, because that's the best way to get a hold of us 24/7. That could also be playing a part of it. But we know based on past history that the numbers where complaints we're getting every month, missed collection we're getting every month is not the norm for us.
I would like to add that staff's way to address this problem of what is acceptable, what is not, is the liquidated damages spelled out in our new agreement.
Mhm.
CRNR is not being held to it was 2 residents per 1,000
It's 22 a week, right? 22 a week,
a month.
month. Was it-
Yeah, it was anything over
So-
22 missed collections a month. We can charge them, I forget the fee off the top of my head, but there is a fee, let's say $100. So for every home missed, CRNR will have to pay staff or CMSD 100, whatever the amount is. And to kind of verify and not just rely on residents reporting, CRNR has allowed to give us access to their GPS. So staff could go in there and make sure, it'll have a dot every time they stop. So staff could go in there and verify what routes were not completed. And hopefully, again, that helps CRNR reduce the number of missed collections, and we see that number drop.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you worked something in that doesn't just rely on the reports, because I know Vice Chair Lester and myself, there were so many weeks where a whole neighborhood was missed, and we put in the complaint on the app and we noted cross streets, but if it doesn't, if one house is counted and there were, 100 homes missed, I'm glad there's an additional backup for to hold CRNR accountable. Do you have a sense of, in the same time with the supply chain issues and high turnover, if other waste haulers in the area are having similar issues, like a significant increase in missed pickups and such?
It is an problem, so retaining drivers. Every other trash company was experiencing delays, was experiencing driver shortage. So it was really hard to just blame CRNR when every other trash company was experiencing similar problems.
Understood. And then one last question, and I'm asking this because I was in, we had the election yesterday, and I was in Mike Schaefer's district, and the person running against him brought up the idea of, why do we have this sort of quote unquote evergreen contract? Why are we not bidding out to other people? And I saw at the end of the report, it says that, we recommend continuing on with this contractor. And I know we've been doing the ongoing negotiations for SB 1383, but I just kind of I feel like I should ask the question, is there a reason we didn't consider, if we're negotiating, and is it an amendment or a new contract? And and was anything even discussed about possibly working with a different contractor?
Well, that information out there is wrong. We do not have an evergreen in the contract anymore. So on the new contract, we negotiate terms on the agreement. And so it was a 10-year agreement with 2 5-year extensions. So the evergreen was gone. This
Okay.
new amendment that we're negotiating is going to change that even more. It's still going to be a 10-year agreement, but then after that 10 years, to extend that agreement, it has to be mutually agreed upon by both parties. So if one of the parties agrees, so for example, if CRNR wanted to extend the contract, but the board didn't, then they would go out to bid. So that's in there. So the evergreen clause is no longer in there. Did we ever look into another contract? No, because that wasn't the direction the board gave us. So the board directed us to continue negotiating with CRNR to comply with SB 1383, and that's what we did.
Okay.
But to clarify, this is an amendment, not a new contract. It's a bad habit. Staff has to refer to it as a new contract just because so much of SB 1383 burden is being placed on CRNR. There's just so many new articles in that amendment.
So I think I saw in the review, it was, the term started in 2018. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, so
Okay.
that in this new amendment, the term is not changed. The contract will end in 2039. And I believe we went from a 2 5-year extension to just a 1 5-year
Oh,
extension.
it's 2032, I think it was it 2032? I don't think it was, I don't think it was that far out. It was like 2032, something. Yeah, and then after that, again, like I said, after the end of that term of the contract, both parties have to mutually agree to extend it or not.
Correct. So it's not 10, it's 10 years from 2018, not 10 years from 2022. So CRNR was clear on they wanted to add those.
2028 then.
Okay, so it ended in 2028, presumably. Okay, got it. Okay. All right, thank you.
I have a question. Amendment, is this on the original contract? And at what point do you foresee going out to bid again?
Will this be our first amendment
Oh,
since
it's
2018?
Amendment 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
First Amendment. And if the parties don't mutually agree to extend the contract, then feasibly we can go out to, we'd probably have to go out to bid in 2027. Could at least take a year for a new contractor to get on board. So that's what the board wants to do.
Jeff Arbor again. Sorry,
Yes.
just one thought. I'm sure like, and maybe you've done it and I missed it in a meeting, but I'm sure like some sort of assessment with like an HM. Well, our fees are actually really reasonable compared to all the cities around us. Did we go over that in a previous meeting? or-
Yes, in fact, it's actually in the report. We do what's called net to hauler rate, which is really the true cost for the service. And it's described in the report. And I think we're right in one of the lower ends, I think right now.
Yeah, we're almost $5 below county average, and those calculations were done by our consultants. So it's not HF&H, but Mike Valley Consulting. So he did oversee those calculations, and he is currently on board helping us renegotiate. Just to make sure that it's a fair, rate and for the services we are requesting and getting.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions on this item? Okay, thank you, Nabila.
You all, good night.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So which item is next?
So we'll go to B3.
Okay, B3, the FOG program. Excellent.
Yes, the Fastenal and Grease program. So thank you, Madam Chair. So any public agency that has at least a mile or more of a sewer collection system must adopt a fats, oil, grease control program. And it's specifically designed to enforce fog control with restaurants or what we call food service establishments, FSCs. Unfortunately, we don't have anything enforcing residential side, but we do have a program for residents to dispose their grease. As you know, this coming holiday, Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, to fry their turkeys, right? And that frying alone generates about 5-6 gallons of cooking grease. So what do you do with all that grease? You just can't put it down the drains. So fortunately, we have a partnership with Orange Coast College. You can take that grease and they'll dump it in what's called a vat. So they'll take that grease, and that grease is taken at no charge and recycled into a reusable product. So there is a method for the residential side. On the restaurant side, we have a fog control program, and we hired a consultant, EEC Environmental. So Joe Jenkins from EEC is going to describe the activities that his firm does to enforce our fog control. And a lot of that is going and inspecting the restaurants, making sure that they're using kitchen best management practices, ensuring that they're maintaining their grease interceptors and cleaning it and emptying it appropriately. And if they're not, then they let us know, and then we can come down on them with some enforcement procedures, which eventually it could be a fine, or we could shut them down if it's ongoing. So we do have some teeth to enforce this code, enforce this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe Jenkins, and he's got a PowerPoint presentation to give you, describe to you on the activities that his firm has done in the past several years. So, Joe.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Scott. So we can start and just get into it in the next slide here. I just wanted to start out by reviewing the services the EEC provides to the Costa Mesa Sanitary District to help them implement their fog control program. And really the main service that we offer and that we do is conducting what we call risk-based food service establishment or FSE inspections. And the goal is for us to prioritize our inspection resources to focus on those food service establishments that propose the highest and greatest risk to discharge fog into the sewer system and cause sanitary sewer overflows. And that's really the goal of the fog program, is to prevent fog related sanitary sewer overflows. And I'll talk about it a little bit later and how we do that prioritization. During the inspections, as Scott mentioned, we inspect their grease interceptors, make sure they're pumping them at the frequency they should be. We're also going through the kitchens, making sure they're implementing what we call kitchen best management practices. But we also provide them with education and outreach materials while we're there. We try to have these inspections be more educational for the facilities rather than us just coming in and enforcing on them and telling them this is what you got to do. So try to educate them while we're there. But we also do enforce on noncompliance activities. So we issue notices of noncompliances. We conduct the initial follow-up inspections, and we also will draft enforcement letters if it needs to be escalated to that point. We manage all of our inspections in a FSE database. So we have the history of all of their inspection records, so we can track their compliance throughout the year and determine like who's causing problems or who's not. We assist with the plan review for new food service establishments. So if someone needs to install a grease interceptor, we make sure they're installing the appropriate types, or we work with the permitting and plan review departments to help them with that. And we also do what's called fog source characterization of enhanced maintenance locations. So these are areas of the sewer system that are prone to heavy fog accumulation. And so we'll work with the district to identify those upstream sources that are causing these problems and then help mitigate those areas. Okay. So I just wanted to go over how we manage the FSE inventory and identify the food service establishments that are included in the program. We use a number of resources to do this. The main one really is reviewing the Orange County Healthcare Agency's database. So they have a list of all of the food service establishments that are in the area. We can download these lists throughout the year to make sure our database is staying up to date. We also work with the different cities within the district to get business licenses from them and those lists through new plan review. So if a new facility is coming in, we get notified that they were issued a permit and we can add them in. And then just do field inspections. If we're driving around and we see a new facility has opened, then we'll add them in. Next one. So here's a little table breakdown, some statistics of the food service establishments in the area. There, currently as of this last review at the end of the 2022 fiscal year, there were 549 facilities within the program. This excludes what we call limited food preparation facilities, the ones that don't really cook any food or have prepackaged food. So those are excluded. Of the 549, 173 had gravity grease interceptors. Those are the large outdoor concrete base, usually 750 gallons or larger. And then 32% of the 549 had the hydromechanical grease interceptors, which are also known as grease traps, which are typically inside of the facility under like the 3-compartment sink. And you can see year to year, we did have a decrease in facilities directly related to COVID-19 and the pandemic. We saw a lot of facilities go out of business, but also at that time, we did a pretty extensive review of the database and identified facilities that are limited food preparation that shouldn't have been there. Then we saw a slight increase over the last year. Okay. So here I want to talk about how we do the risk prioritization of the food service establishments to determine what inspection frequencies they have. And so we have a bunch of different factors that we review, especially when there are new facility first coming in and opening their business. So we look at their presence of what we call high risk cooking equipment. These are grills and griddles and woks and deep fryers, anything that would produce a lot of fats, oils, and grease through the processes of cooking meat. Their location in proximity to an enhanced maintenance location. So if they're upstream of a high fog related EML, then we'll prioritize them to be inspected more frequently. If they have a grease interceptor, then we'll increase their inspection frequency just to ensure that they're keeping up on the maintenance of the grease interceptor. And it could be if they have special BMP, best management practices requirements, such as extra line cleaning of their private sewer line or anything like that, then we'll increase their inspection frequency to ensure that they're doing that. Yeah. There's just a breakdown of the 549 facilities, how many are under each inspection frequency. So 45 quarterly, 75 are semi-annual, 169 are annual, and 260 are biannual. And we use geographic information systems to plot the facilities on a map document so we can prioritize our inspections and put them into different inspection zones so that the inspectors can maximize their time when they're out doing inspections. And so throughout the year, we'll review their current inspection frequencies to see if any of them need to be modified. Their compliance history can cause a modification. So if they're consistently in non-compliance, then we'll know we need to inspect them more frequently to get them in compliance. Through maintenance or CCTV observations, we work pretty closely with the operations and maintenance departments, and they give us reports when they identify heavy fog accumulation in the sewer system. We review the healthcare agency inspections. So if there's a note on there that a facility was out of compliance during their healthcare agency inspection, then that'll trigger them to be inspected more frequently. And then just through general inspection field observations. So are they doing illicit activities? Are they having a lot of private sanitary sewer overflows? Or have they had a lot of backups in their system? If they have, then we'll want to inspect them more frequently until they can show they can maintain consistent compliance. Some examples of these on the next slide. So we had one facility, they're a large bar and grill, not mentioning the specific what the facility name is or anything, but it was in the report. So there's a large bar and grill. They were originally on a quarterly inspection frequency. They had recent private sanitary sewer overflow, and they were having issues with maintaining a good pumping frequency of their grease trap. So they're consistently exceeding, it's called the 25% rule. So it's if the floating fog and settled solids content exceeds 25% of the over volume of the interceptor, they're out of compliance. And so they were doing that very frequently. And so we increased temporarily their inspection frequency to monthly. And then they also increased their grease interceptor pumping to at least once every 2 months. And then we monitored them for over a few month period to make sure they could maintain that compliance. And then just recently they were moved back to a quarterly inspection frequency. We have another large breakfast chain restaurant. They're originally on an annual inspection frequency. They don't have a grease interceptor. So that's why they were only being inspected annually. But they had consistent non-compliance issues, private SSOs, a lot of backups from their private sewer line into their kitchen area. And so we decided to adjust their frequency to quarterly and made them do regular hydrojet line cleaning of their sewer system. And we confirm those records from their plumber that they're doing that. Okay. So I mentioned we also assist with the review of enhanced maintenance location and the goal to reduce these locations. You don't want to have a lot of enhanced maintenance locations because that means you have a lot of areas that are prone to spills, but it's also taxing on the resources of the operations and maintenance guys that have to go out there and clean those locations. So in 2011, there were 97 EMLs, and those have currently been reduced down to 18. And this doesn't include the siphon locations. These are mainly ones that are EMLs because of roots or structural deficiencies or fog. And so we're working to continue to keep these 18 locations under control through reviewing cleaning observations of the crews and then doing enhanced source control on the fog areas. And so on the next slide, I have a couple of examples of two locations that we're focusing on. So you have the area of the camp and the lab there on Bristol Street. This is just an area that has a lot of food service establishments that discharge into one location. It's at the top of the sewer line. So there's not a lot of water scoring velocity to push the fog down the line. So it all builds up in these areas. And so we're working with the property owners there to control the fog to ensure the facilities stay in compliance and keep up on their BMPs and their pumping frequencies. And we've increased inspections for this area. 19th Street, they have a lot of issues. It's an older area of Costa Mesa, and you have a lot of facilities there that were open prior to the implementation of the fog program. So at that time, we don't like to use the word grandfathered in, but they were essentially grandfathered into the program. They weren't required to install grease interceptors. And so they operate under what we call conditional variance. And so there's just a lot of FSCs in there with no grease removal equipment. And so we've increased the number of inspections we do in this area to make sure they're keeping up on their BMPs. And then we've tried in the past to work with them to install devices, but it's very slow going. I mentioned the key goal of the fog control program is to prevent and reduce the number of sanitary sewer overflows. And so that's a key metric and trend to review to determine the effectiveness of your program. And you know, this isn't just through the fog inspections or the work that we're doing. This is also the proactive sewer line cleaning that the cleaning guys do, the rehab and rehabilitation projects, and the reduction of the EMLs. As you can see, the top line here is just total public sanitary sewer overflow. So it's anything that could cause a spill, like roots or rags or structural damage in fog. The middle line is fog related public SSOs. So you can see the trend there. And then it's hard to see the what we call non-residential. As Scott mentioned, we don't enforce on residential fog. And so we only focus on the commercial ones. So the bottom line is our SSOs caused by commercial facilities. It's hard to see it because it's going along. You haven't had a commercial related fog SSO since 2013, which we did this assessment at the end of July, and I think maybe there was one in August. So this report will be very different next year, but just one. But knock on wood, it's still a good trend to see. Okay. So program recommendations continue with the risk-based analysis and an FSC inspection prioritization. It's important to focus on where the highest risk is for fog discharge and sanitary sewer overflows. I mentioned those two locations. You know, it's important to prioritize our inspection resources in these areas and not overly inspect facilities that are in compliance and not causing any problems. We also have a goal to maintain compliance with facilities, so 10% or less non-compliance rate for kitchen best management practices violations, and then 10% or less for non-compliances with grease removal equipment inspections. That's usually pumping frequency. And last year, I don't off the top of my head, we met the 10% goal for GRE non-compliance. It was very low, it was like 3%, but the BMP non-compliance was at 16%. And we think a lot of that was contributed because of the turnover of the food service establishments employees. They lost a lot because of the pandemic, and then now they're rehiring new employees and they have to redo their employee training. So we're seeing a lot that haven't done that. And so in order to meet these goals, we're also recommending escalating enforcement and enforcing on chronic non-compliance issues. So like these employee training issues I mentioned, and then any evidence of excessive fog discharge in the sewer system, like I mentioned, 19th Street. And we've already started to implement these goals. I review compliance history with Steve Cano, the sewer system maintenance supervisor, and we review frequent non-compliances, and we've started issuing enforcement letters to those who have frequent non-compliances for like employee training. And so with that, I can open it up to questions. Anyone has it?
A couple questions just to educate me again. You mentioned grandfathering of some of the businesses. Can you speak a little bit more about what the what those fog discharge mitigation requirements are for new businesses and when that timeline of grandfathering started, as well as, are there any enforcement actions where you can require a business to adopt, to purchase the equipment necessary to mitigate the issues that you uncover in your inspections?
Right, okay, yeah, okay, good question. So first, the fog control program was established in 2004. And so any facility that was open prior to 2004, at that time, if they didn't currently have a grease interceptor, they weren't required to retrofit and put one in. Okay. But if those facilities then go out of business and a new business opens up there, then at that time we can require them to install a grease interceptor. Also, if they make any changes to their kitchen equipment, say they add cooking equipment or make underground subslab plumbing changes, then at that time we can also require them to put in a grease interceptor, or even if they just change ownership. But a lot of times, just because of an ownership change, if they haven't had a history of non-compliances, if they're not causing any problems, we don't typically require them. And it's usually hard to track ownership changes because we don't get those reports from them, but it can trigger it if we're aware of it. In addition to that, they operate, if they don't have a device, they operate under a conditional waiver, conditional variance permit. And so if we find that they're either not in compliance with their kitchen best management practices or causing heavy fog discharge to the sewer system, we can revoke their conditional waiver or variance permit and then require them to install a grease interceptor. And so we've gone through that process with a few facilities in the district since that has started. And so we've had a couple of large restaurant chains that were causing issues that had to put in grease interceptors. But it's a very difficult thing to request of a restaurant, especially like a small mom and pop place, because you're asking them to spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to retrofit with a large grease interceptor.
So that would be that was the next question, is what are those average costs depending on the type of, food for the FSC?
Mhm.
Yeah. What are the costs for the equipment and the servicing of that on average?
Yeah, so it depends on the device and the installation. If we're just talking about the hydromechanical grease interceptor that's say going under a 3-compartment sink, then someone could get that in for like $5,000 to $10,000. It just depends on what they have to do. The main cost is the trenching and pipe redirection within the restaurant, because you have to separate out the sanitary waste from the grease waste. You can't have bathrooms and toilets going through the grease interceptor. And so they have to essentially trench and rip up all of their floor and out into their parking lot and separate. And so that's a major cost. The unit cost for the devices isn't that bad. You can get a large gravity grease. Well, I say relatively, it's bad. I'm sure it's bad to some people. It's a big number, in the $7,000 to $10,000 range for the units for a large interceptor. But the installation cost is where the excavation that's needed to go in. Sometimes there's shoring, redirection of utilities like electric and gas lines. And so when you start adding in those factors, we've seen the costs, like I mentioned, the 50, 60. If there's high groundwater, they have to do dewatering, which then ends up costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it depends on it. And then as far as maintenance, it's the pumpers usually charge between 20 and 25 cents a gallon for pumping. For the smaller devices, they'll charge usually like a flat service fee rate just because they have to come out and do it. But it's usually in that 20 to 25 cents per gallon range. And then they typically pump on a quarterly basis. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Joe. This is Elodie Katz. Welcome back. Thank you for your presentation and for all the hard work you're doing. I just had a follow-up question regarding if you do have an FSC that requires additional visitation, are they required to pay extra for that additional time? How is that kind of structured?
Not currently for following up on fog inspection non-compliances. We don't currently have like a re-inspection fee. We do have reimbursement fees if it's in relation to a sanitary sewer overflow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times our staff will have to be on site for more than just the 30 minutes to an hour for a sanitary sewer overflow. So there is reimbursement. They basically just, invoice the facility for our time. But there's not currently a fee for re-inspections or anything like that.
And this might be a question more for Scott, but the general program as far as, are we billing the FSCs generally, or is the district just paying for this program overall?
Yes.
The district is covering it as part of the FOG compliance?
Yeah, it's
Oh, there
paid
it
through
is. Thank you.
right. We get the fees from their permit fees when they submit their permit fees for the FOG program. That's how we fund the program.
Excellent, thank you.
And Dean Fisher has a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, just for,
Yeah.
for the, for some development like the camp, where you've got, constant food vendors, changing in and out of degrees of capability. Is there a grease trap on that whole facility?
No, so each individual facility within the camp and the lab has their own dedicated grease interceptor that they
Oh,
manage.
they do?
Yeah, so that's a relatively new establishment in there. And so at the time of that construction, they were all required to put in a device and maintain those devices. The issue with grease interceptors is that they're just not 100% effective. In reality, they're probably like 60 to 70% efficient. It's better than nothing. But when you have a lot of them, like the camp and lab in one place, all discharging to one location, then it's inevitable you're going to have fog
Oh,
in
okay.
that location. And I mentioned too, it's at the top of the sewer line, which means there's no flow behind it pushing anything down. It's just all the flow is from the camp and the lab. So it adds to the accumulation without that scoring velocity is what they call it.
Chair Katz, this is Mike Schaefer. Do you mind if I make a quick comment?
No, please go ahead. Hi.
Hi, you never give a elected official a microphone. It gets real. I'm gonna take advantage. You be careful. Just want to make a point to all of you, and normally I wouldn't speak for the entire board, but I'm going to anyway because there's just Arlene and I here. We take this FOG program extremely serious. We have a terrific partner in EEC Environmental, and they do a outstanding job with these people, including the major breakfast chain, which I had some issues with.
Yeah.
But anyway, the potential for the overflow when it comes to grease is tremendous. A lot of restaurants may have an employee that said, "Oh, it's just a cup of grease. Nobody will know if I pour it down the drain." Well, that accumulation over the years can cause some really severe problems, which could lead to an SSO. And if it happens to hit an environmentally sensitive area, we're going to get dinged. I mean, when I say we're going to get dinged, the state's going to come and impose some absolute horrific fines. And it's not a fine system where they look down a chart and go, well, this SSO was so many gallons, so we'll charge you X amount of dollars. They have discretion. That the state boards have discretion. I guess it's discretion. Maybe it's something else, but they can charge you whatever they want to charge you. And the potential for that, Elodie, kind of back to what you were asking about, who pays for this? Well, if that major SSO happens and the district gets a terrific fine, we're not going to be able to track back down to who's responsible for this. So I know our board takes the FOG program and what EEC does extremely serious. And I think we do a pretty good job. Well, I know EEC does a pretty good job, a really good job with this. So we're going to continue that. One other quick comment, and I think as we move forward, the potential for a residential FOG, you probably don't think is going to be all that major. Being in the line of business that I'm in, insurance, I get a lot of customers that will call me and say, my sewer's got a problem. And I've seen homes where the sewers might be a 4-inch line. Generally, there are 4-inch lines that go out, into the main line, and they might have 2 or 3 inches left for several feet in there because, I I cooked something tonight and it's not that much grease. I'm just going to pour it in there. So I think as a district, one of the things that we're going to need to take a look at is the education of our residents. I will tell you that when I get a customer who calls me and says, my sewer's plugged up and they put a camera down there and it's full of grease, insurance doesn't pay for that. That's your dime. And when they have to replace those lines, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but they have to dig out your entire slab and it's really, really expensive. So right now the focus has been on the commercial side because that's the big potential. But I think going forward, we need to look at residential measures or residential education to make sure people don't do that. A couple of years ago, Scott was talking about people deep frying turkeys. I don't know how many of you tried it. I did it once and once was enough, right? But I recycled all my grease. Don't look at me like that, Judith. As we move into the holidays, again, a terrific partner at Orange Coast College, because they let you bring the stuff over there. We even had Scott appear on Channel 5 KTLA with Gail Anderson pouring grease into the system. Was it 10 years ago? I lost track. So anyway, just wanted to reaffirm that the board takes this program really, really serious. And again, we're really pleased to have a partner like EEC. So thanks, Chair. Thanks for letting me rant a little bit.
No, thank you for your comments. To your point, and I believe this is accurate, in addition to the OCC drop-off location for the holidays, couldn't residents also put it into their green waste bin if they choose, the organic green waste bin if they choose? The grease from cooking and
Yes,
whatnot.
I know Scott may have something to add to that, but I know they can't have it be free flowing, so they'd have to have it in a container or a
Okay.
bag. But Scott can.
If it's like it's just like a can of grease, that's fine, you know, like a little 8-ounce can, but we don't want you to pour in 5 gallons of cooking grease in organic carb. No, we wouldn't want that. But if it's a small amount of
I
grease,
guess
and
I
it's-
meant with general cooking, yes.
yeah, it's mixed with the
You can
other.
tell I've
grease.
never deep fried a turkey, so I don't know how much grease is generated from that.
Oh, it's a lot of grease when you fry it. Yeah.
Apparently, okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying, but just a small amount could go in, okay.
By law, the rule is anything in excess of 5 gallons has to be removed by a certified waste hauler.
Perfect. Excellent. Do any committee members have any additional comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so with that, I believe we're circling back to item B2 about the Eldon project. Is that what you have as well, Scott? I apologize, I'm not there in person. I have a cold. I don't want to get anyone sick.
Thank you. Well, happy holidays, everybody. I get to talk about one of my favorite projects. It started a few months back. The general manager and I were chatting about force mains and what are we going to do about the different pump stations. And we started talking about this particular project. And one of the reasons why we started having the discussions is that, and I'll tell you a little more about the story, but we had to remove the air release system off of the force main. And I got to experience a contractor implementing our emergency response plan. And so that kind of got the ball rolling. But let me start by saying that I get to provide you with an overview of this project and why we're proceeding with it. And basically the bottom line is that we want to reduce risk. And Vice President Schaefer was saying that he doesn't recall, but the regional board or the water board, which is out of Sacramento, or regional board is the local folks. They could charge up to $10 a gallon for a sanitary sewer overflow. It generally gets negotiated down to maybe $1 a gallon or something like that. But when you're talking 1 million gallons, that's a big fee that you're going to pay. Next slide.
give you a few slides. This is on Mesa Drive at Eldon, looking northbound. Our pump station is on the right there in the shadow. And that's where we're going to probably make some connections here. And then our pipeline would run north along Mesa Drive. This is a picture looking closer to Newport Boulevard, and that the other side of the bridge is, I think, gate number 10 for the fairgrounds. And this is State Route 55 and the bridge over that State Route 55. I've moved over to the gate 10. I'm on that, what is it? Would be northwesterly corner of gate 10, looking back down Mesa Drive towards Eldon Pump Station, which is way down here. This shot is, this is the corner where I was standing at earlier, and this is gate 10, and I'm looking now southbound on Newport Boulevard. Next slide. I'm walked, this is probably just south of Mesa Drive. I'm looking along our pipeline alignment, which goes in this lane of traffic, and it goes down towards Fair Drive, which is way down here. I'm now at just north of Fair Drive, looking the opposite direction. So I'm kind of looking back and forth here. So here I'm looking south, here I'm looking north along our alignment. Our alignment's right around this curb and gutter here next to the State Route 55. Next slide. I'm at Fair and Newport, and I'm looking westerly. So our pipeline kind of cuts across the corner here, goes through the sidewalk, and it ends up right now at this manhole cover right here. There's a manhole and a manhole framing cover, and our 18-inch force main goes to here. And this is the main gate, and then City Hall is across the street. Next slide. The existing force main, what we have is this is our largest pump station, and we have about 2,000 gallons per minute. Of course, it's a range. It goes anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 gallons a minute of inflow to the pump station. And we have two primary pumps that each pump about 4,000 gallons a minute into a ductile iron pipe that's about 3,300 feet long. And we pump about 1.4 million gallons a day, which is about the size of 2 Olympic swimming pools. Well, what does that all mean? I guess I'm going to say that if you fill this room with wastewater, we'll basically fill up 16 of these rooms in one day. That's how much wastewater is coming out of that pump station. Next slide, please. Now, we want to do a project. Why? Well, number one, or the first concern, I don't know that it's the biggest concern, but what if there's a major earthquake on the Newport Inglewood or San Andreas Fault? I don't know that the Caltrans bridges are, I don't know if they're going to have these types of failures any longer, but there could still be some damage. And could that damage cause our pipeline damage? And we have one pipeline that goes through a Caltrans bridge. The other issues we've had is we can't perform our maintenance. We always have to have the thing running. Can we do a condition assessment? A while back, the district tried putting in smart balls, and we've tried to do ultrasonic, and we've done some stuff, and we do have some information, but it's very difficult to do. And so we want to be able to do this. And then when you do any work at all, it's very, very tough when you have one pipeline. And I'll talk more about this, but when just removing that air vac from the force main, we had to do it in the middle of the night. It took us about 5 or 6 hours, and we spent a lot of money. The other thing is I'm worried about line breaks, outside contractors, some other weird thing happening that potentially damages our pipeline. Edison was out putting in some new power poles, and they're putting a dead man in, and next thing you know, their auger went right through our 8-inch sewer pipe. So, things can happen, and it based on the pipeline and what we'd have to do to make that repair, I'm not sure we would be able to manage shutting off the sewage to get the repair completed. And we just want to make sure that we're ready to go. A good example and a good agency, Orange County Sanitation, they have a Lido pump station down in Newport Beach. They had a spill this past weekend. I think it was Friday or Saturday. Somebody noticed some sewage leaking out, and they were able to switch from force main 1 to force main 2, and guess what? They stopped the leak and now they can make a repair and they're not spilling any wastewater. So we want to be able to have that same capability. And quite frankly, the water board and regional boards and the health departments expect the same thing. They want agencies to have best practice. This Eldon Pump Station is at this location. Our current force main is the dotted line that runs north to Newport Boulevard, across the bridge, then it comes south and it goes along the southerly fairground boundaries until it dumps into our 24-inch pipeline and then goes over to Orange County Sanitation District. What we're proposing is a parallel line to Newport. Then we would go northbound Newport to where the freeway daylights with Newport Boulevard. We would bore or drill underneath the freeway, put in a pipeline there, then come all the way back south and tie into this force main. Now, in order to get a redundant system, we would have to build a new pipeline from here all the way to our valve facility here. It's just 3 valves right now. But then we also have a old abandoned Techite pipeline that runs from here across the corner and into this location. And we're hoping to use that pipeline to refurbish that, put a liner in, maybe pipe burst or do something in order to get complete the second pipeline and making a redundant system. Next slide. Our Eldon Force Main project, it basically would have and use 3,300 feet of new 18-inch pipeline. We would rehabilitate about 2,300 feet of our existing out of service pipeline. We would need to modify the existing pump station in order to be able to pump from any of the pumps into either force main. We would have to replace the valves, which we were planning to do anyway. We have some money that's available from that project, and we're going to use it for our Eldon Force Main or potentially another project that I'll tell you about in just a minute or two. And then we want to provide a way to maintain it, assess the pipeline, maybe drain it if we need to get in there and do something, put robotics or camera or whatever it is. We want to be able to do that. And right now we can't do really any of those things. It's very, very difficult. And then we're going to have to modify the downstream manholes so that 2 pipes can come in and get into the flow can get in from either pipeline into our gravity system. Right now, we're thinking that the cost can vary from 9 million to 13 million. This might be a little different figure than you saw over at the study session on Monday if you watch that. But that's because maybe the next slide will help me with this one. Nope. But I'll get to that one. I'm sorry. Eldon bypass. Why am I thinking we need, we want to do a temporary bypass. So we think it's going to take 3 to 5 years to get a project implemented. And what happens if tomorrow something happens? We have an emergency bypass pumping plan. And I'll say that fortunately for me, I got to see a contractor implement our emergency bypass plan. And what they did is they basically brought in, I think it was 17 pumping 5,000 gallon pumping trucks. They basically got as many trucks as they could muster in the Southern California area. And then they still needed 8 more trucks. And so they imported 8 trucks, and it took 2 days to get those 8 trucks down to Southern California, get them staged with the other 17 in order to start our project. So basically it takes 2 days to at least get everything here and get the trucks going. So my thought is, if it takes that long, what are we going to do with the wastewater? I mean, we might be able to start pumping and we'll reduce the flow, but are we going to be able to get it all? I don't know. And then when we were actually pumping, I think they were getting efficient as they were practicing, and the trucks were learning to shuffle in and out and at the different locations. But what we noticed is that during the low flow and the shoulder flow, they were able to keep up. But as the flow started to go up around 6 o'clock in the morning, we weren't maintaining flow anymore. The good thing is we were finished with the project. Slide. So what we want to do is a 2-phased approach. The first one is we want to modify our pump station and be able to put some overland temporary piping. So we would make the connections. We might need to get some new headers and some new temporary piping. We would need to buy some lay flat hose, something that could be laid out, put together by staff or contractors. And then we would tie it into our existing pumping system and use that to get the flow past any break or any issue with our first force main. We could do that potentially in about a 6-month time period, and we could expedite that and order the equipment, because most of the equipment is probably the lay flat hose, and that would probably have a 4-month lead time. So if we could get that ordered, we could get it in within that 6 to 9 month period or 3 to 9 month period. Second part would be, let's implement the bigger part of the project, which is put a new buried pipeline in and do all this other work that we said we were going to do, and get that project completed. Next slide. So what is a temporary system going to look like? This is a schematic of our existing pump station. So this, think about it as we're bird's eye view looking down at the pump station. This box right here represents the primary pump station. This green line is the primary 18-inch force main coming out of the the Eldon pump station. This blue line is the force main coming from the Irvine pump station. So from Irvine, the sewage comes up through, dumps into the wet well for Eldon. Eldon pumps then take it and repump that, in addition to all the other gravity flow from that east side into this pipeline and over to the west side and over to Fairview, where it goes over to the Orange County sanitation districts. We do have a backup pump right here. Pumps about 2,500 gallons a minute in through a engine driven pump that goes into our force main. So if this for some reason goes down or we have a power outage, this backup engine starts pumping flow until the primary station comes back alive. So right now we have a way to, I'll say, hook a 6-inch pipe here and a 6-inch pipe there. So what we want to do is dig a hole, replace this 6-inch piping with two 12-inch pipes. And we want to do the same thing right here, put a 12 by 12 cross in and add two temporary connections there. And then what we would do is we could use those temporary connections to hook up some temporary hoses too. Next slide. So what does all this look like? Ignore these pumps. What I'm trying to say is we would have to have a header with a couple of pipes coming out, and for our size, it would be two 12-inch pipelines. Next slide. That pipeline would be basically placed along the road. So it could be thought about flexible pipe, but lay flat seemed to be easiest for us to store and maintain rather than having HDPE or long sticks of pipe. Where would we put, basically 6,000 feet of pipeline, or sorry, it's probably more like 4,000 feet of pipeline. So anyway, where would we do this? But the concept of laying it in the street and getting it from Eldon over to the fairground entrance is what we would be trying to do. This is just another example of pipelines and pumps that are used to bypass flow. Next slide, please. This is a device. It's a trailer with a little motor on it. That motor then spins this reel, and each of these are 4 slots that hold 4 slots of 600 feet of 12-inch lay flat hose. It's basically like fire hose, but 12 inches in diameter. And the stuff gets pretty heavy. And so you need about 6 people to deploy this device. Next slide. To give you a picture of how big it is, there's 4 people here. There's a driver, and there's probably the person who's helped organizing is taking the picture. But this thing's about 10, 12 feet tall, and there's 4 of these little compartments with 12-inch lines. So this thing's, like I said, 10 or 12 feet tall. Next slide. Overall, this is the same price that I gave the board of directors back on Monday. It was a $10 million to $14 million range. The emergency bypass, we think, is going to be about $1 million. $750,000 of this is just the lay flat temporary hose. We think we need about another $250,000 worth of station modifications, and that's delivered. So that includes plans, specs, bidding, everything we need to get things going. So this $1 million is pretty firm. We're hoping to come in a little under that. The Eldon project, however, it's got a much larger range. Right now, based on what we know, we think it's going to be about $10,500,000. 7 million of it would be pipeline. We've got a 1.2 million in delivery costs. And because there's a lot of unknowns, specifically, how much is it going to cost us to bore under the freeway? There's 2 60-inch storm drains that are in the freeway, digging deep holes on either side, taking a boring device and jacking and boring under the freeway. There's a lot of unknowns right now. We're not sure how much that's going to be. So we have quite a large contingency, and we're hoping that that comes down. But as we doesn't move forward with design, this number will firm up, this number will come down. And I'm hoping it's right in here, but I will say there is risk, and what we don't know could cost us money. So I'm still going to give a range. It would be very nice if this drops down closer to the 9 million range, but I don't know that that's going to happen. Next slide. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. I was trying to run through this really fast because I know it's after 7 o'clock and you guys like to be done before 7:30. So with that, I'll entertain questions, and I'm sure I left out information, but basically, what do you got for me? Yeah, our goal is to use truck pumping. That was, and the reason why truck pumping was developed was because it's probably not very practical to shut off Newport Boulevard and all of that. We understand that. But if we truly have a major catastrophe on our hands, something really does happen to that force main, I don't think we have a choice but to shut that down. It's probably better to imposition traffic for a week and reroute them around and get them back to the SR 55 Newport Freeway, or divert them off of the freeway because we would impact, I think, the exit for Fair Drive. But we would have to look at all of that. But that would be our last resort. What we don't want to do is not be prepared and need that. Okay, that's really the goal here of getting the temporary system in.
So the implementation timeline for the bypass is 3 to 9 months. And then what is the time? It still requires board approval? Okay.
Yeah, our plan is to take, I need to make some budget adjustments to the capital improvement outlay this year. And I was already working on that with our finance manager, and I was planning and I am planning to take budget adjustments to the November board meeting. So that project, we're I'll say reprioritizing our outlay program, and I'm deferring 2 or 3 projects to make that happen. And so we're taking an item to the board at the end of the month to get that temporary system approved. And then we are at least starting to work on it and make the purchases. And then what we also are going to ask for is money to start design. What I didn't tell you, because I'm trying to go so fast, is we don't necessarily have $10 million or $11 million right now. So we're looking to work with the County of Orange, see if they have money that they would give us towards this project. We've also touched bases with the state of California, and they're looking to see if maybe they would help us with the project. If both of those fall through, then we could either get a loan or we could maybe sell some bonds. So we're thinking about that. But two things we want to accomplish. Number one, by spending, let's say, 600, 700,000 for design, I firm up those numbers, and we're able to tell then whether it's the state, the county, or a loan company, hey, this is how much the project is. Plus, then I have a shovel-ready project that shows them we're serious and we're ready to go. So we're going to be going to the board to ask for a little less than $2 million authority to start working on this project. And then we'll come in and fund some extra money in June to finish up the front end work that we're trying to get done.
That initial funding, both for the redundancy project, the engineering, as well as the emergency bypass, that's you can fund that without loans or any borrowing through existing budget?
Yeah, I guess the answer is yes. We're taking the existing 2 million or 1.4 million from this year and some carryover from last year, and we're covering that $1 million by deferring, I think it's 3 different projects. Okay, so that $1 million is covered within our current budget. The 800,000 for the design is not necessarily, I'll say, income neutral. So while we raised rates this year, we only had enough rates to cover 1.4 million. Well, that 800,000 wasn't in that. So we might be looking to dip into our reserves to fund that design of the capital improvement. But to answer your question, we're not necessarily going to go into debt, and we've got that part of it covered right now.
Mark, I'm sure that you looked into many alignment options. How did you come into the final alignment?
I guess I'm going to say that we looked going south and across the Fair Bridge. We looked at going across the State Route 57, I'll say south of Mesa, but then you got to really dig a deep hole because the freeway is so depressed in that location. And so we started looking north and realized basically the freeway and Newport Boulevard are at almost the same level there. So that seemed to be a very good crossing point. Now, we might be able to put a second pipeline down Mesa Bridge, but we thought if we get it out of the bridge and if the superstructure was ever damaged for whatever reason, a buried pipe is probably less likely to be damaged than a pipeline in a superstructure. That's what we're thinking, and that's how we ended up at that location. But we did look at that crossing, the Mesa Bridge, under the freeway, and then the Fair Drive Bridge, and we kept coming back to that one. Seemed to be the most or the least risky from a damaging perspective should something else occur. But I'll tell you, Dickie, we haven't looked in I'll say design detail yet. We are, one of the things I'm asking our consultant to do is look at, is there something we missed? Is there a better alternative? Is there something else we can do? I want to make sure we do that before we go too far in this project.
Kind of follow up on that based on, you know, the where you would cross the freeway. Do you already have access to Caltrans documents to determine where the best place would be to bore? Or that's in the engineering, the study?
It's going to be in the engineering work. That's one of the things that there's many activities that we're looking to have the consultant do. And that's why it's probably going to be a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 design fee is that we're looking to them first. They've got to do, you know, a review of what's going on out there. We need them to do some survey work, come up with base maps, probably do an aerial photo. There is utility searches that they need to do. We've got to have them get the Caltrans plans, the City of Costa Mesa roadway plans. There's so much stuff just to get to the point where we can do I'll say a preliminary design report that talks about the alternative and pros and cons and all the stuff that we need to do. And then once we get to that stopping point, it's a good time to take a step back for a second and see what the consultant says about the alignment and where we're going to go. And do we need to make any tweaks to the program? And what's the money aspect of it? By the time we get the preliminary design report done, we should know a lot more and be a lot closer to having a solid number for this project. Good question. Anyway, thanks for sharing, or thanks for letting me share. Thanks for listening. And if you do have any further questions or something comes up, just give me a call. I know that Rosemarie came in today and was asking me some questions, and we had a really great conversation, actually. I thought it was fun. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I believe that brings us to item B4.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This item was originally scheduled to be heard today or tonight based on the work plan that was approved by the committee for the 22-23 year. But however, As you'll notice in the staff report, we're just informing the community that this item is going to be delayed because of time constraints, we just didn't have we did not have the time to conduct our study and do a plan check review. So just FYI, I just wanted to let the community know that this item has been delayed, and we'll bring it back to you in a future CAC meeting.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so we covered everything in item B. Okay, that brings us to closing items, committee member comments. I can't see the room. I apologize. Does anyone have any comments to make?
Nothing tonight, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, I had a couple things I just wanted to mention. I'm sure everyone knows, but we did have an election yesterday, and 3 of our board of directors were up for re-election. And if I'm reading the OC Vote website correctly, it seems like everyone was re-elected. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
congratulations.
It has been
It's
finalized.
not official.
Yeah,
Don't
it's not-
jinx it, Elodie.
Okay,
Please
okay.
don't jinx it.
Okay, I won't jinx it, but seems promising. I just wanted to let everyone know that that was happening. And then I wanted to circle back. We had an Eco Expo at the end of September that staff just did such a fabulous job putting on. It was very well attended. Some of us volunteered at the table for the Citizens Advisory Committee to talk with a lot of the people that came through, and it was just a lot of fun. So I just wanted to give a shout out to staff for it really successful event and really good. Do you have any numbers about how many people came or anything you could share about that?
It was
Just off the top?
130, I want to say 130 people attended. It was definitely exceeded our expectations. It was again, it goes to Nolani and Gina and Angela. They're the ones that really put it together and did a really successful program. Heard great even comments from the city of Costa Mesa. They were really surprised how well attended it was, and kind of learning from us on how they can do something similar in the city. So no, it's just we're looking forward to doing it again next year. It was very successful. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's see. Does board members or staff have any comments?
no, Madam Chair, I don't.
Okay.
Actually, again, I grabbed the microphone. Just to reiterate what I've said before, and I think all 5 of us, huh? Turn it off? Yeah. Just to reiterate how much we appreciate, the board appreciates you guys taking your time to do this. These are really terrific meetings. The questions you come up with, I'm a little nervous as which one of you is going to run against me at the next election, because you're all really good at this. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I hope you do run for election, some of you, because you got some great ideas and some great input. Again, just thank you for your time in doing this.
Well,
Now
thank
you, Esker.
I think Secretary Schaefer would like to
see
say
her.
something.
Yeah, I see her talking.
Secretary Schaefer, you're muted. You'll have to unmute yourself.
No.
Unfortunately, we can't unmute you. I think you have to do it yourself, but we're trying. I think there's-
It should be on the lower left of your screen.
We're have to move on. So I'll try to get Secretary Schaefer's.
Oh, there she is. No, it's unmuted. It's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, I finally did it. I just wanted to make a comment that, I'm so impressed with this committee. I haven't been to it for a while because I've had conflicts. But aside from that, I used to come to this and, you know, I can just see how you're so into everything that's going on. And the chair does a super job. And, you know, like Mike said, you know, we are so impressed with how good you are. We're not even looking for your vote because it's over. So just want you to know that, you know, you're doing a good job and we appreciate it. And I think staff really helps too. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Okay, well, with that, I'll adjourn tonight's meeting. Our next meeting is in the new year. It'll be Wednesday, January 11th.
January. Yeah.
Can't believe it. So happy holidays, everyone.
Mm.
Madam Chair, happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
Take care.